is the fastest growing podcast in the nation. The Sports Parade Magazine podcast, heard daily by tens of thousands. Hosted by the one and only Mark Clark, the man with the New Orleans accent who gives it to you straight with no chaser. Damn, I love that Mark Clark. Give him a call, 713-553-6370. Email him, markclark@sportsparademagazine.com, or follow him on Twitter at MarksWords or at SportsParadeMag. Or listen via any phone. Simply dial 619-550-0516 and at the prompt number 4. There's no better way to advertise or hit your target market than with the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Call 713-553-6370 for rates. And now, without further ado, the man, my main man, he's a bad man, Mark Clark.
Oh, that's me, baby. That's me. Mark Clark, publishing editor of Sports Parade Magazine. I want to welcome you back to the podcast today. Good morning. It's Thursday, February 21st, 2013, the NBA trade deadline. We're going to be delving into that. And we're also going to be delving into what's going on with the NCAA. I mean, it's just literally falling apart. And for those that don't know, when we talk about the NCAA, we're talking about the governing body. The governing body that has to be above reproach, that has to be able to instill, investigate, and enforce the guidelines in terms of attending class, of recruiting violations, of competitive, honest, balance, the nature in NCAA and all of the different sports. But mainly we're talking about basketball and football, the two biggest money makers. And I tell you, we've had all this stuff with the NCAA football, with the is it going to be a playoff? Is it not going to be a playoff? Is it going to be a pseudo playoff? And we're going to have this system coming up in a year where you're going to have a 4-team, maybe a 16 playoff. But it's not the type of system that is above reproach that's going to stop all of the naysayers that say this is not right what we're doing. We're engaging in something that's not putting the best teams forward to have a competitive shot at winning the title. Then you have March Madness coming up, and all of the billions of dollars that they're getting, the NCAA is getting in the television revenue from the contracts, from ESPN, from CBS. Billions upon billions of dollars, and the players can't get anything. They can't get a t-shirt. They can't get a tattoo. I mean, nothing, literally if you're a student athlete. So does this foster an environment where you're forcing kids, to basically break the rules? Then you have a situation where, the coaches never seem to get in trouble. It's always the institution. And the coaches walk scot-free. They can go to the pros, not miss a beat, collect money, but the players always tarnish. Well, the proverbial you-know-what may have hit the fan. This week, the NCAA is supposed to rule against the University of Miami, the U, about alleged wrongdoings. So let's back up and tell you what are these alleged wrongdoings. For more than 2 years, the NCAA has been investigating allegations against the University of Miami that a booster, mainly Nevin Shapiro, who's currently serving, mind you, 20-year sentence for running a $930 million Ponzi scheme. And he basically said that he basically ran, for the last 10 years, the University of Miami athletic program in terms of access, in terms of paying players to attend the school, particularly the football program. And in the past, the University of Miami has had issues, has been fined, has been investigated and sanctioned by the NCAA. So this would be like almost a proverbial death knell to them if this was true. But something that's very, very let's just say, you usually don't see NCAA presidents of different member institutions go up against their proverbial boss, who is Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, former LSU president. Well, Miami President Donna Shalea is politely declining interview requests while they get ready for the sanctions from the NCAA. She further went on to say, "We have been wronged in this investigation." She said in a statement, the NCAA made public the report of an external review that found significant misconduct by its enforcement staff. Think about that. Significant misconduct by the NCAA's own enforcers, the people that are in charge of investigating and coming back to determine what penalties, if any, and what rules, if any, were violated. Well, the actual investigators, the enforcers, were breaking the rules. They were breaking the rules in investigating the boosters' allegations against the University of Miami. Tuesday, after the NCAA issued a notice of the allegations to Miami in the case, they cited, among other things, the lack of institutional control. Those words right there, basically saying that we're going to do whatever we want to do to you in terms of penalties, in terms of sanctions, when you say a lack of institutional control. But from the very beginning, including now, Miami has been on the offense, saying they're not just going to take whatever the NCAA does at face value. For one, the whole allegations, everything, 2-year investigation basically boils down to published reports in sports publications like Sports Illustrated and TV interviews done behind bars with Nevin Shapiro, the alleged booster, the alleged ringmaster behind all these investigations. That's it. There's not a shred of actual evidence. There's no canceled checks. There's no taped conversations. All it is a situation where this guy was a booster and gave money to the program. There's no players that have come forward and said, yes, he gave me money. There's no tape of players receiving money. There's no canceled checks. There's none, I repeat, none, timeline that backs up his statements other than him making the statements on shows like 60 Minutes, on shows like ESPN, Outside the Lines, and in various sports publications like Sports Illustrated. 2 years, millions of dollars gone into an investigation, and you really, other than taking the word of a convicted thief, a convicted liar who's serving over 20 years, that's what they're going to basically judge the University of Miami on. You know, 2 years ago, when the NCAA came down on the University of Southern California with sanctions, then athletic director of USC, Mike Garrett, vented about the NCAA at an off-season booster function. And that was very rare to even hear that. This was after they had been fined, after they had been penalized, lost scholarships, lost the ability to play in bowl games. And he said after those allegations came down that the penalties were overreaching, overbearing, and many times without merit. They were hearsay. There wasn't a lot to tie, at the time, Reggie Bush to violating a lot of these rules. And Reggie wound up, hurting the school. He had to hand back his Heisman Trophy winner. They had to forfeit a lot of those wins. But going forward, it just hurt the school and the team and the program because they can't compete in bowl games and the loss of scholarships, which is so critical in terms of the depth of a program like USC, in terms of them competing for national championships. Garrett's comments were defiant against the NCAA and President Mark Emmert, that they weren't doing their due diligence, that they were violating rules in terms of the investigation, and quite frankly, that the investigation was just shoddy to begin with. Now you have Shalea coming out even before any penalties are handed down. And she says, we're just not going to take this anymore. And it's unprecedented for a university president to come out against her own governing body. But there have been many, many frequent critics behind the scenes at member institutions. And Chalet has basically thrown down the proverbial gauntlet. Bring it on, prove it. Prove what you're saying. We're not just going to accept the penalties and sanctions that you come down with. We want you to prove it, particularly after your own external report. The NCAA has found that your own investigators, your own governing body, has broken various laws and also basically did shoddy investigation work. So we have to, remains to be seen how that's going to play out. But I tell you what, if the governing body of any institution, whether you're dealing in society, with a police force, with a district attorney's force, district attorney's office, or in this case, like we said, the governing body who's responsible for basically being the judge, the jury, and the executioner in college sports, once they lose so much credibility, it's like so many grains of sand under your feet. Who's going to believe you? How do you have the moral and ethical authority to go forward? Mark Emmert is basically to blame. Under his leadership, institution in the NCAA that basically was tarnished to begin with when he took office has gone down even further. It's gone down even further in terms of the credibility. And in terms of this investigation against Miami, the charge is on the table that they've had a lack of institutional control. And those are dire words, but where's the proof? Where's the proof? Once upon a time, the public opinion would have judged the Hurricanes guilty without a second look. They're the bunch of thugs. They've said it in the past, the different things that they did. Hanging with rappers, taking money, 2 Live Crew. We've heard all of the things about the University of Miami, the bad boys of college football. That's how tarnished and how bad and how bungled the NCAA as an institution has become. That even with the reputation of the University of Miami, by and large, the public and member institutions feel that the University of Miami has been wronged in this case, and no penalties have even been handed down. That's really serious. And you see what's happening now is more of this whole national championship series, this BCS, this pseudo playoff system. It's all about the dollars. And the NCAA has become corrupt. The NCAA purports to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. But to do that, you have to have considerable confidence from your member institutions, from the public. You have to have the credibility, the image, and they simply don't have it. They want to seek, and I say the NCAA wants to seek stricter rules, but they play fast and loose with their own standards. They don't demand accountability from their own staff, from their own office. It's about the perception of everything, particularly at a time when you're trying to come down hard on a member institution like the University of Miami. That's bad. That's bad, bad, bad. And if Mark Emmert had any sense, he would just resign. He would resign. Whether you're David Stern in the NBA, whether you're Roger Goodell in the NFL, once you begin to lose credibility of fairness, of decency, of morals, of ethics, and your own investigation internal shows that your investigators are breaking laws and rules that you've set forward, you have no more credibility. And if you want to begin to turn that tide, you have to step away. You have to step away. If you don't step away, you become a paper tiger. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what the NCAA has become. Well, we're going to take our first break of the day. When we come back, it's going to be NBA trade deadline. We're going to break down the teams. We're going to break down potential trades, some trades that have already gone down as we speak today. As the NBA rounds it up, winds it down, the final 25-game stretch of the playoffs. It's been a long season. Once again, you know that voice, that New Orleans accent. It's your boy, Mark Clark. And we'll be right back at you with the Sports Parade Magazine podcast.
This club so packed, these girls so drunk. This club so packed, these girls so drunk. I got my money, and I start bow. The club full of bad bras and they came to play. Okay, it must be air, cause it ain't your fate. Now if you looking for them bottles and them stacks, girl, then make your way up to my section where it's at, girl. Okay, now do you wanna kick it with somebody with a meal ticket broke, so they looking mad, they just gotta deal with it. Get right, girl, roll the dice, girl, and you ain't gotta be ashamed cause you're like.
Get ready, America. Up next is the fastest growing podcast in the nation, the Sports Parade Magazine podcast, heard daily by tens of thousands, hosted by the one and only Mark Clark, the man with a New Orleans accent who gives it to you straight with no chaser. Damn, I love that Mark Clark. Give him a call, 713-553-6370. Email him, markclark@sportsparademagazine.com, or follow him on Twitter @MarksWords or @SportsParadeMag, or listen via any phone. Simply dial 619-550-0516 and at the prompt number 4. There's no better way to advertise or hit your target market than with the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Call 713-553-6370 for rates. And now, without further ado, the man, my main man, he's a bad man, Mark Clark.
Welcome back to the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast, Thursday, February 21st. When we left off with the Sports Parade Magazine Podcast, we were talking a little bit about the NCAA and basically their lack of institutional control as a governing body. But before we get into the NBA, we have to go to the strange. As I say, the fool of the week. In this case, South Africa, going all the way to South Africa, the Blade Runner, the double amputee, as we've known it, Paralympic medalist and Olympic contestant, Oscar Pistorius, basically arrested for murdering his girlfriend. I mean, if you haven't heard this story, it's like really bizarre. So on the second day of the hearing, of his bail hearing, questions were raised about whether a banned substance or an herbal supplement was found in the bedroom. First of all, let's back up. We're going to go way back. Just let's press the rewind button. This guy was the darling of the Olympics, affectionately known as the Blade Runner. You had a guy that was born and because of birth defects basically had to get both of his legs amputated. The parents made that decision early on. So he basically never had the use of his legs. Despite all of that, he rose to heights and brought attention as an athlete, as a Paralympic athlete, with those specially designed blades that were substituting for his legs. And he did very, very good as a double amputee. I mean, extremely well in the Paralympics, but he wanted to take it a step further. He wants to compete in last summer's London Olympics. And he did. He became the first double amputee sprinter in the 400 and a 4x400 relay. Now, he only finished 23rd in the 400 meters, and his team was only 8th in the 4x400. But just to see him on that track, to see him as a world-class athlete, man, the Blade Runner it was just fantastic. Everyone loved the story. He had the looks. He was articulate. It was just a fantastic story. Well, all of a sudden, we got this big bombshell dropped last week that, there was a shooting at his home in South Africa, and his longtime girlfriend was dead. A model from South Africa who happened to tweet the day before Valentine's, when this murder occurred, what do you have in store for me, my love? What's our day going to be like? What are we going to do together? This has all of the makings of a Hollywood script, a Lifetime movie. The beautiful model. The social media aspect where she's tweeting to the world her love and affection for her boyfriend. Looking forward to the romantic surprise on Valentine's. Then you have the Blade Runner. Classic good looks, blonde hair, blue eyes, South African, overcoming being a double amputee, becoming the first double amputee sprinter in the regular Olympics, not the Paralympics. And to compete, even finishing 23rd out of hundreds of athletes in the world. Just a world-class performance, a world-class athlete. Now you find that she's basically murdered in his house, shot multiple times. Now, many have said that it's extremely volatile and dangerous in South Africa. That someone as well known as the Blade Runner would have to have extremely high security, brick wall, would have to have weapons in his home to protect himself, and that there are many times many burglaries. So he breaks down after the arrest. He breaks down in court. He's crying, and some are left to say, well, is he crying because he got caught, or is he crying because this is so tragic? The death of his love, his girlfriend. But then some say, the Blade Runner's case as being put forward by his defense attorneys is basically that it was a case of mistaken identity. He didn't know that was her. I don't know if I'm buying that one, particularly since she was shot multiple times. Then you have stories coming forward that not only was she shot multiple times, but that it was not a surprise when they got the 911 call from residents and neighbors, because they had been there before. My question is, through all the interviews on Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, NBC Olympic coverage, Bob Costas, all of these different big-time national media outlets, ESPN, no one bothered to check the background? I mean, that's the first thing you do. We understand what you've overcome. A double amputee, basically never had use of your legs. Being able to progress as an athlete with these running blades, to become a world-class sprinter. We understand that, but if you're going to be a reporter, if you're going to be a major media outlet, you have to do your due diligence. And part of that is checking out, what kind of guy is the Blade Runner. And many will say, well, Oscar, was a nice guy and we never heard any bad doings. But now that you have this tragedy, this murder, alleged murder, that'll be determined by a court of law. In South Africa, it says, well, there were many, many incidents before of domestic abuse. No one could find that out before? Or did they find that out and it didn't go with the narrative that they were trying to promote in terms of Olympic coverage? It went against everything that they achieved professionally to talk about the dark side personally. Now, as the case drags towards a court date, you have people saying that there were hours upon hours of arguing and fussing in that home on Valentine's before his girlfriend wound up dead. The charges have already been upgraded to premeditated murder, which will probably make him ineligible for bail. The girlfriend, Reva Steenkamp, he said was mistook for an intruder. But now we found not only is this young lady dead, but yesterday they found that there were bottles of steroids and testosterone throughout the house. Banned substances. And we also know that this testosterone and steroids, these banned substances, had the side effect of rage among these athletes. Anger, rage, violence, aggressiveness. Of course, the defense attorney for the Blade Runner said it's just an herbal substance, not a steroid. If you got vials, I don't know what kind of herbs you using, Chief, but vials are not herbal substances. They are what they are. They are what they are. Now, he was tested, like all the Olympic athletes, but it seems to be, as in the case of Lance Armstrong, that these tests are basically not up to par. That if these athletes want to cheat, they're able to fool anti-doping committees, including the International Federation that's supposed to analyze and test these athletes. They're able to get around. But all this is going to come to light in this trial. Is it a case of everyone covering up the dark side of this athlete? Is it a case of people covering up and making so much about his great performance, but it was basically done with illegal substances now? And at the end of the day, you have this beautiful young life taken away, snuffed out, even though she was on social media hours before her death, pledging her love and saying what was going to be in store for her. Hard to believe that she just came over there and he would shoot her multiple times, not knowing who she was. Man. We got to do better than that.
Get ready.
Got to do better than that, because we have to be in practice due diligence. We can't just treat these athletes like gods. We have to keep it real. Okay, we'll be back. The Sports Parade Magazine podcast. We'll come back. We're going to delve into the NBA trade deadline and some moves that some teams should and shouldn't make on the Sports Parade Magazine podcast. We'll be right back at you.
By the whole bar, pop bottles go hard. This club so packed. These girls so drunk. This club so packed. These girls so drunk. This club so packed. These girls so drunk. I got a bottle, got my money and I stop. Bow.
Next is the fastest growing podcast in the nation, the Sports Parade Magazine podcast, heard daily by tens of thousands, hosted by the one and only Mark Clark, the man with the New Orleans accent who gives it to you straight with no chaser. Damn, I love that Mark Clark. Give him a call, 713-553-6370. Email him, Mark Clark at sportsparademagazine.com or follow him on Twitter at Mark's Words or at SportsParadeMag. Or listen via any phone. Simply dial 619-550-0516 and at the prompt number 4. There's no better way to advertise or hit your target market than with the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Call 713-553-6370 for rates. And now, without further ado, the man, my main man, he's a bad man, Mark Clark.
Welcome back to the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. Remember, always follow me on Twitter at Mark's Word or at Sports Parade Mag. Well, let's get to the NBA. You know, people say the NBA really doesn't get started until after the All-Star break. That's where we are right now. 25-game sprint to the finish. Because the All-Star game is not really the halfway point. It's really the beginning of the end of the regular season. So now we're going to sprint to see who can make the playoffs and who can position themselves to possibly dethrone LeBron James, D. Wade, and Chris Bosh as NBA champions. So far, only one trade late last night. The Kings sent rookie forward Thomas Robinson and veteran small forward Francisco Garcia and second-year forward Tyler Honeycutt to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Tony Douglas, third-year player Cole Aldrich, Patrick Peterson, and $1 million. Now, the thing about this trade, which gets me about Sacramento, you have to understand, Sacramento is in the turmoil in terms of, you know, the city is trying to keep the team there. The Maloof brothers have basically agreed to sell the team. They're going to keep a small stake, but they're going to sell it, and that team and the new owners want to move back into the Seattle market. Back to Seattle. So, you know, it makes you really wonder about this trade because, you know, while Patrick Peterson is a solid player, it has a lot of upside for the Rockets, the Kings moved Thomas Robinson. Robinson was the 5th pick overall out of Kansas in June's draft. The 5th pick, lottery pick. And he has struggled to see significant playing time behind veterans such as Jason Thomas and Chuck Hayes, which are no great shakes. But you have to really question the dynamics of the front office and ownership and the thinking when you get rid of your lottery pick halfway through his rookie season. A lottery pick that really hasn't had the chance to hit the floor as you would have wanted. But to give up after only half of a season, a lottery pick, which is like gold, that really is a bizarre move, to say the least. I think it's a mistake, and I think it's really, really a great move for the Rockets because this kid at number 5 of a lottery pick has a potential to be great. Now, maybe time will prove that he's a bust, but right now, giving up only halfway through his rookie season at a number 5 pick doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, the big name out there has been Josh Smith of the Hawks, and people keep saying, where will he be? Will he be traded? Well, he's going to be a free agent after the season, so anybody that gets him is going to be renting him, unless it's a place that he really wants to go, and sign a long-term deal. Now, the thing about Josh Smith, I mean, he is a terrific skill set. 6'9", thick, strong, fast. He can pass the ball. He can rebound that ball. He can take the ball down the court. He's powerful. Plus, he has a shot. One of the best passes among big men. And one of the few guys, as we saw in maybe his last game as a Hawk last night, that, you know, really came on. Really came on in terms of what he was able to do last night against the Miami Heat. He can match the physical nature of LeBron James. Very few players in the NBA can say that. And it's not a situation where I'm trying to say a center But in terms of the athletic ability, the dynamic nature, the skill set, he could match a LeBron James. I'm not saying he's a LeBron James, but I'm saying I don't understand why they're so quick for the last 3 years to want to throw the Atlanta Hawks, I'm speaking of, throw Josh Smith's name up there. This kid, given the right coach and the right set of circumstances, I think can lead a team to the finals and the championship. The other big news, will the big two now, since Ray Allen is already gone a year ago in free agency to the Miami Heat, will the big two now, Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, who are long in the tooth but still have the potential for a year or two to help a team win a championship, will they be broken up? Because when you look at the Celtics, the lineup after Rajon Rondo, who's out with ACL, it's a very old team. Chris Wilcox, 30 years old, 10 years in the league. Jason Terry, 35, 13 years in the league. Paul Pierce, 35, 14 years in the league. Kevin Garnett, 36, 17 years in the league. Jason Collins, 34, 11 years in the league. Leonardo Barbosa, 30, 9 years in the league. You're not going to compete with young guns in this NBA. You're simply not going to do it with old legs like that. Like I have to say all the time, dog years. It's simply not going to make it. So will one of those players be moved? There's been talk that maybe Garnett will be moved to the Clippers. The Clippers will make one big run at a title. Maybe they give up young point guard Eric Bledsoe and another starter. Since Bledsoe is not going to see the light of the day as long as Chris Paul is in Clipperland. But the question remains, will Chris Paul resign with the Clippers long term? When he was traded, the deal was only like 2 years. 2 years. They have 2 years to compete to convince Chris Paul to sign. So the question remains, will Garnett be traded? And even if he is traded, will he agree to it? Because when you're players like Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, you have in your contract the right to refuse trades. So it remains to be seen if either one of those guys will be removed before this afternoon's trade deadline. I personally think going forward that the Lakers have to consider Danny Ainge as a general manager, trading both of them. The future of this team is Rajon Rondo, 26-year-old point guard, despite the knee injury. Garnett and Pierce will not be in the long-term plans, will not be in the long-term future of the NBA, let alone the Celtics. So I think you have to make every effort to try to move them because they're diminishing return players, diminishing returns. The warning signs have been there for 2 years or longer when the Celtics kept coming up short in terms of the championship. They simply can't get it done anymore. And I think they've reached a point of no return where, you know what, they're 28-25. Yes, they went on a small winning record since Rondo has been out. But make no mistake about it, this team is not going to compete against Miami, against young teams like the Knicks, against the Pacers in the East. It simply is not going to happen. And if you wait yet another year, I don't think there's going to be any market for a 37-year-old, 18-year player, 18 years in Kevin Garnett, or a 36-year-old, 15-year player in Paul Pierce. I think that's fool's gold. Fool's gold, I say. You're fool's gold. Don't be a fool. Move both of them. And finally, the big news, Dwight Howard. You know, we've talked about this ad nauseum about you had this week the tragic, the death of a great owner, a great sportsman, a great guy in Dr. Jerry Buss, the owner of the Lakers. And I said how it was just ridiculous the way they went about things. It was ridiculous the way they went about assembling this team this year. Kobe Bryant, long in the tooth, still has a couple years of greatness, but too old to be the dominant Michael Jordan, LeBron James type guy. Needed help. When you sign a point guard, Steve Nash, come on, 41 years old, injured most of the time, and even since he's been back, doesn't have the quickness to burst or the vision that he once had. You have a team assembled with Meta World Peace. You have a team on the bench with guys that are 15 years in the league. You fire your coach after 5 or 6 games. Then you bring in a coach and Mike D'Antoni that's basically known for just running and gunning. But you don't have any young guns and young studs to do the running and gunning. So there's been a lot of turmoil. And Dwight Howard has brought a lot of stuff on his own. He's wishy-washy. He's kind of childish. He wants to be liked by everybody. That's simply not doable in life or in the NBA. Everybody's not going to like you. And sometimes you have to have a mean and a nasty streak. Now, the question remains, some say, get rid of Dwight. First of all, let me explain something to you. He's hurt. The back surgery, the back is not healed. And he also has a torn labrum in the shoulder. But let me tell you something. Despite all of that, he's the leading rebounder in the NBA. I want you to think about how amazing that is. Despite not having a coach that's conducive with his system, not being happy in LA, not being utilized right in LA, not getting along with Kobe, being childish, being immature, he still leads the league in rebounding. Now, people say he can walk away from nothing. If Dwight Howard wants to further tarnish his reputation, which he may indeed do, because that's exactly the route that he's been on since the prior 2 years with Orlando, he can re-sign with another team. He can go to Brooklyn or he can go to Dallas or wherever he wants to go. He will never have respect among the league, among its players, or his own legacy with the fans in the history books. Yes, he's only 27, but dog years again. Came straight out of high school. Straight out of high school. So you're looking at a 10-year player. No one can give him as much money as the Lakers. 5 years, $118 million. If he signs somewhere else, it's 4 years, $87 million. You're leaving $35 million on the table. $35 million on the table. Now, will that back ever heal right? Will it heal properly? The shoulder, yeah, you can take care of that. Will that back heal properly? Only the medical experts know that. Only they know that. But I tell you what, there's nothing out there. When you look at franchise players, we're not talking about a guard that you're going to give a max contract to. That's simply not the stud that you thought he was. We're not talking about a small forward that puts up big numbers but then in clutch time can't get it done. We're not talking about a guy like a Joe Johnson. We're not talking about a guy like a Gilbert Arenas. A person of the size, stature, and ability of a Dwight Howard doesn't come along often. And I think they have to be all in because let's face it, they made this trade last year with Andrew Bynum. Have you seen Andrew Bynum this year? No. So you can't say it was a mistake because Andrew Bynum hasn't played. Maybe he'll never play again. He's a head case. There's no one out there, and there are few franchise players, even despite all of the turmoil, all of the mistakes made with the coach, with the assembly of talent, particularly Steve Nash. Steve Nash was too old. If you couldn't get a young stud point guard, you should have just waited a year and then try to hit up the free agent market. Or wait 2 years. You tried to placate Kobe Bryant and said, okay, you got 2 years left. We're going to try to win a title for you. Well, you know what? Another title just may not be in the cards no matter how good or how great Kobe Bryant is. And whether Kobe likes it or not, the future of the Lakers is not Kobe Bryant. Not at his age, not after those dog years on his legs. The future is either going to be Dwight Howard or no one. It's going to be Dwight Howard or no one. Now maybe you want to move Gasol even though he's hurt now. But if you can't get equal value for Gasol, you definitely don't touch Dwight Howard. And yes, these guys control the league. They control them in the old collective bargaining agreement, and they control it in the new collective bargaining agreement. But when you have a player of the stature and the skill set who's hurt but still leads the league in rebounding, there's simply nothing to be done but say, hey baby, this is our future and we got to roll the dice with him. That's it, baby. You know, I give it to you straight with no chaser. I don't play those games. I want to thank you for joining us on the Sports Parade Magazine Daily Podcast. I can't stress it enough. Hit me up on Twitter, @MarksWord or @SportsParadeMag. Check out Sports Parade Magazine YouTube channel. We're going to break in the rest of the NBA playoffs and then some March Madness with some little features, some breaking news. And remember, I'm Mark Clark. Check out the website, sportsparadeMagazine.com. And all of the different places.
This club so packed, these girls so drunk. This club so packed, these girls so drunk. This club so packed, these girls so drunk. I got a bottle, got my money, and I start bow. The club full of bad bras and they came to play. Okay, it must be cause it ain't your fate. Now if you looking for them bottles and them stacks, girl, then make your way up to my section where it's at, girl. Okay, now do you wanna kick it with somebody with a meal ticket broke so they looking mad, they just gotta deal with it. Get right, girl, roll the dice, girl. And you ain't gotta be ashamed cause you like, girl. But every day I strip behind the wall, I do a big ride, fly, stun, shining ball. I got a bunch of money, so come and get it from me and a bucket full of bottles. Bust it open if you want it. This club so packed, these girls so drunk. This club so packed, these girls so drunk. This club so packed, these girls so drunk. I got a bottle, got my money and I start bow. Ain't like a young money, young. Pop that pop like a pull a trigger. Shake that like a salt shaker. I keep the L lit up like an elevator. Shake it like a dog, hot like a frog, ride it like a horse. I throw that like darts. Drink all muddy, flag all bloody. I'm killing these hoes like Ted Bundy. I'm a good looking rapper, I ain't trying to stunt. I'ma fire my body like Donald Trump. Where you at? Where you at? Can a nigga stick his key up in your back, so this club so packed, these girls so drunk. This club so packed, these girls so drunk. This club so packed, these girls so